thank you very much for taking the time and joining us this afternoon for our the first part of our training. This is the second general information session that we are presenting. We really appreciate you being here. We know it's a part of your time and how valuable it is, and we believe that most likely we will be able to end early today. We're hoping to. That's what we did in the last session. But of course, we also want to make sure that if you have any questions, we answer those questions. So if you wouldn't mind using the chat function for any questions, we'll be monitoring that, and we will take the questions, I believe, at the end of each section. Is that the way you want to do it, Paula?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are presenting the two general sessions, and then we'll be doing the two general sessions, and then we will do 2 sessions on controlled maintenance. And then we will be doing 1 session for state agencies, which will cover capital construction and capital renewal. And as you are all aware, if you are an institution of higher education, you will be sending your capital construction, your capital renewal through Lauren Gilliland at CCHE. So that is why we are restricting our capital construction, capital renewal conversation to just state agencies. So thank you very much. Just as a quick update, there was a bill that was passed last year on ADA signage, and that bill stipulated that by January 2021, that our office would send a letter to the U.S. Justice Department to ask for permission for a change of our it's the wheelchair emblem. And as you recall from the bill, the changes is that the individual in the wheelchair is moving slightly forward, indicating forward movement. We have sent that we've sent that letter off. I do want you to know that so far that change of ADA signage has only been approved by the U.S. Department of Treasury. It has not been approved by the U.S. Justice Department for any other state or any other federal agency. So while we have not heard from them yet, we cannot implement it. Also, you should be aware that the group that we were supposed to be partnering with was disbanded by the legislature last year. So OSA is the final authority. And I would like to ask if someone could just put in the chat. Okay, you can hear us. Great. Thank you very, very much. All right. So then the other item I wanted to talk to you all about before we get into our agenda is our prevailing wage legislation that was approved in 2019. That was to be implemented in 2021. We'll be talking about it more during our controlled maintenance section, but I just wanted to let you know that our goal is, and it has not been approved by the legislature, but our goal is that we would have a 6-month extension on the implementation of prevailing wage. That's why you haven't heard from us. Our office has been heavily involved in building COVID hospitals for the last year. And so we have not been able to do the work on that we wanted to and that we needed to. So the legislature is considering that. And that does not mean that your institutions of higher ed, that will not postpone your requirement to have all higher ed projects approved by your governing board to avoid prevailing wage implementation. That deadline still stands, and that deadline is by July 1, 2021. So please do not think that your governing boards have more time, because they don't. And then, so if you all wouldn't mind using the chat function, that would be great. And then we'll get going into our instruction updates. So you will notice in your instructions that they're updated yearly, and that we always tend to change our instructions. The blue text in your instructions will indicate changes. The red text will indicate something that is very important that you need to adhere to. Please note that all forms are OSA forms. In other words, we don't want you modifying them in any way, because if you do, it only hurts what your submittal is. So, and then also, and Paul is going to explain it later, we are color coding our instructions from this year forward. So you cannot use last year's or year before, year prior instruction forms for your submissions. They will not be accepted. You'll have to redo them. So please, please only use this year's OSA instruction forms. And then I wanted to give you updates on the instructions, your critical dates. May 3rd is the last date to submit the facility program plans to OSA for state agencies for the current year capital construction projects. June 28th, all OSA visits will be completed. And as you all recall, we moved our schedule up a couple years ago. Governor Polis had us move our schedules up. So this is the dates that we have been given from OSPB, and those are the dates we're working towards. July 6th is the due date for all forms to our office. So please, please don't miss your deadlines. And because we really do want to make sure that everybody's as successful as they possibly can be. And that's all I've got. So with that, and I don't know, are there any chat questions, you all? Nope. All right, great. So with that, Paula, you got the floor.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Many of us have seen this movie, Jerry Maguire. Basically, he's an agent for a football player, Rod Tidwell, and he's lost all of his other clients and he only has Rod left. And basically he's asking Rod, or saying to Rod, help me help you. In order for me to help you, you need to help me. So help me help you. And with that, OSA is, well, the agencies are OSA's clients, and it's important for OSA to work towards common goals and recognize requests and instructions from OSA in order to help OSA help their customer, which is you. One of our duties is to collect project information yearly and present our findings. And over the past few years, Rod has been compiling all of the documents, and OSA is now going to standardize the naming requirements. It's important for us to have standardization so that we can sort these files easily, quickly, and so we don't lose files. What we're going to request is the agency name, the fiscal year, the form ID, the priority number, I'll talk to that a little bit later, a short project name, and I'll show those examples in the following slides. File names should not be more than 70 characters, and that includes spaces. So no underscores, no dashes, no symbols, except for in the fiscal year, there's a dash between the year. The project name should be short or abbreviated. A lot of times we've had the file name so long that it actually corrupts the file. So we've talked with OIT and when we had received some of those files, and they said the best thing to do is try to standardize and to shorten the file name. So we're asking you to help us help you. On these files also, we want no links or password protected files. And if you have a revision, you're going through documents and you decide, well, you have to do a couple of tweaks or revisions, we're asking that you put R1 or R2 at the very end of the name. Files that are not using this standard or our guidelines will be rejected by OSA. The picture was me last year. Next slide, please. So these are our annual forms and examples of file names, how we've named different files. You can see that the acronym is 3 to 5 characters. The fiscal year will always be 7 characters. And the form name will, of course, vary, but it can be anywhere from 6 to 13 characters. And the project priority will be 2 characters. The project name can be around 30 characters. So we're asking that we have less than 30 characters or 70 characters so that we don't have file corruptions. And again, no underscores, dashes, squiggly lines, whatever. we just want to make these files easy to sort and make sure we're all on the same page. The next slide, please. This again is capital construction, capital renewal. As you can see in the form name, we are not putting a dash between the CCCR or the 5P. The same on the second line, the CCCRN, there's no dash in between these. The agency acronym is 3 to 5 characters, fiscal year 7, the form name 6 to 13 characters, and the project priority, as you can see in the second row there, the file name uses the agency acronym, the year, CCCR, N for narrative, and then 03, that's the number of priority, and it's SCF kitchen reno, meaning renovation. Again, we're trying to abbreviate some of the file names so that we still understand what the file is, but we don't have to spell every single thing out. We don't have to spell out building for the word building. We can just put BLD or BLDG, either one. So this is just giving you a flavor of how we would like the files named. Okay, next slide, please. And this is controlled maintenance. Again, we have the 3 to 5, 7 characters for the acronym, the fiscal year, the form name with no dashes, and the project priority. The project name, again, we have on the third row, DPA CGW, Camp George West, with no dash in between, and the fiscal year CMN, no dash in between that, and the project priority number. You can see there we abbreviate it to building, BLDG, and it makes sense. It's readable, and we can sort a lot easier with the shorter file name. Next slide, please. So we're asking also help with the photos. Photos should be identified by agency and projects. Photos must be in PDF or JPEG format. All photos must be submitted per projects. You may submit numerous photos for each project in one PDF file, but do not combine different project photos together. All labels should be outside the image. Down below is the boiler room with the big red X on it, and then boiler room with the label outside the picture. That's how we would like to see those. Also, when submitting maps, which is sometimes very, very helpful, we're asking that you submit 2 site maps. One would be unmodified, so basic site map with not a lot of information, and then another with your project information on it. And the reason for that is in case we need to tweak it or scan in or have to manipulate it in some way, shape, or form. Next slide, please. So every year we are going to be modifying, changing the color for our forms, and because the forms may be modified every year, we figured this is a very good way to know that we've got the right form, the right year. We're asking that all agencies use the current form. This year, we can go next slide, please. This year, all of our forms are Goldenrod. So like I said, every year we're going to have new forms. They're going to be colored. This year is Goldenrod, and the forms will have blue text for changes, and failure to use the new forms can cause documents to be rejected. It's very important. Also, completed forms should be sent to Paula Greenwood and the agency's OSA representative. Corrected or revised forms should also go to both the agency representative and Paula Greenwood. Oftentimes, you may be having a conversation with your representative and decide to make a revision, and you send the form to them, but you forget to copy me on the form, and I don't have the most updated form. So we're asking that you send it to both your representative and me. Next slide. In addition to submitting all the forms to OSA, executive departments are required also to send the CCSR forms to OSPB as indicated within the instructions in section 1.7, budget request submittal transmittal. All links and password protection must be removed prior to submission. This is very important in order for us to work with the files. Next slide. And that's it for me. If you have any questions or need help with naming files, you're more than welcome to email me or call me. I'm here to help. And next is Rod and Tana. Thanks, Rod.
Shall we go over the questions we had in the chat real quick?
Oh, sure.
So the first question was, are you going to assign the acronym for higher ed? And the answer is no. Every institution and agency has a 3 to 5 letter, except for History Colorado. They're lucky they have 2. But everybody else has an acronym. And you know, if you want to put the C on for DOC or you want to leave it off, we don't care, as long as you use a short 5-letter acronym. Next question.
And Tana, Tana, on that, they must be consistent as well. They had asked that question, I believe, last meeting we were in, and we've assigned acronyms, but some agencies want to put the C in front and some don't. As long as they're consistent, that's the key here, is consistency.
Okay. The next question is there a file size limit? Rod, do you have a size limit?
I don't have a file size limit. Basically, from an outside agency to us is generally 10 gigabytes or megabytes actually is allowed size through the email. Some people can break them up. You can actually post them to Google Drive and share that drive with us. The issue with Google Drive is if you do a Google Drive share, you need to let us know when you revise those forms on Google Drive. Google Drive will not indicate to us when you modify a file. So you always need to tell us, either send the file to us directly, or if you share it through Google, tell us you send us a new file. Some schools allow a short-term FTP to one of their folders, and we will download the files that way. And we still accept jump drives.
Okay. Next question is, can photos be inserted into the form?
Yeah, there's
Yes
2 answers.
and no.
First answer is yes, you can insert folders to help tell the story, but we still need those photos as a separate PDF or JPEG. And
Right.
as Paula showed you, do not put descriptions into those photos. The photos should be as either file name or outside the photo itself, because when we manipulate those photos, if your description's in the photo and it covers what we're trying to show, the photo's no good.
Right.
Was everyone able to hear Rod? Somebody commented that.
Yeah, and I was just looking at that, and actually Sherry, he seems fine to me. Well, Rod's never fine. He's Rod, but he
Oh,
sounded
God,
fine.
where's my mute Sherry now?
Uh,
Wait, I had that option. The other question, yes, we will post these slides on our OSA annual documents webpage.
Especially the slides with the examples showing how to name the file folders. So yeah, I think that's pretty important for you all.
Now, the stuff coming up is important too, though, just so everyone knows.
Yes, yes, it is. This can't be-
Okay,
Go ahead. Try to present now.
So, Rod, what do you think about the memory stick?
Memory stick jump drives, I call them the same thing.
Yeah.
Just got to mail them to Paula, and then she will upload them to our folders and let us know.
all right, if there's no more questions.
All right, let's go to the next one. Come on. Wow. I guess I'm not sharing my screen. I don't know what's going on. Let's try that again.
Maybe it's just a dark night you're showing.
There
Yay.
Never mind.
It
We
could be
see
that.
it, we
It
see
could
it.
be my memory.
It's your dark soul.
Yes.
Okay, and with that, we're going to jump to the annual forms. The first form, well, first I wanted to let everyone know, if you haven't already gone to the OSA website, you'll notice it's dramatically changed since what it looked like for the last 4 or 5 years. But if you haven't played with it, you will find all of our annual forms and the instructions in State Buildings / Capital Construction down within the OSA website. And then once you're there, you'll scroll down to the annual facility management reporting forms, which corresponds to section 4 in our instructions. So the first form, as you see on your screen, is the CCSR status form. You may notice we removed 2 columns, the percentages for spending and I think percentage committed. We've removed those, but in their place, we added column 9 for project delivery. And within that, as you put in a project, you'll find pull downs that within that cell that give you the options of design bid build, CMGC, design build lump sum, and design build GMP, and then other. And within other, please use that for projects if they were only funded as a study, because otherwise your AE agreement that you used should begin to dictate the delivery method. If you have a large project and you have several contractor agreements using different contracting methods, then put in the notes that use your largest projects, and which I should mention is column 14, which is new. So don't put it in your status, column 13, please put it in your notes and take advantage of that new column. And also, if you're using a P3 model, public-private partnership, please also note that in column 14, but we want to know what delivery method you're using, even if it's a P3, please. Let's see. Our do's and don'ts below the illustration. Please use your project title in column 2 that was given for the legislation. Do not use the name you used on your initial request. Please don't change the name. I know oftentimes, you get a building, you don't have the donor yet, and then you get a donor and you want to name it that, or the institution or agency came up with a fantastic name that's so much better than the generic name in the project title. We need it to be the one that was used in the request and approved by CDC or JBC for spending. Let's see, let's use one line for each approved addition to spending authority, appropriation, or supplemental. So if you're fully cash funded, this isn't nearly as important, but if you had to go before CCHE or CDPHE, or excuse me, CDC, sorry about that, please note that as a separate line so that we can track the various approvals. And finally, in line 1, put a project number in there. We're not particular about your cash funded projects, what number you put in, but we want it to be consistent. So if it's not appropriated through legislation, please put in a project number that you're going to use every time you use an OSA form. That's the number you're going to use, and then keep it consistent. That way we can track it from year to year. And then finally at closeout. One caveat to that, I know some of you, because of the way your accounting system works, you have a different project number tied to the appropriated project number from the controller. We don't want your internal number. All OSA forms and this status report needs to have your appropriated project number, not your internal one. All right, with that, next slide, please. Okay, CM status report, similar to the CCCR, we did remove the percentage columns. We added the project delivery method, and then we added the column 13 notes. See, we got to back up here. So in column 8, the project delivery method where it's other, we want to know, well, I'll back up. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. In column 13, we want to know where your transfers have occurred. So rather than putting it, into your column of 3 or 4, we want to know that the project's numbers that were transferred in or transferred out. Don't change 3 and 4 to accommodate the transfer. If you transferred money out, consider that money 100% committed. If you've transferred it in, it may look like you're farther along than you are, but we're really, in this instance, we're tracking the dollar value and not necessarily the status of the project. That's the columns 8 through 11, and that's telling us where you are with the project. The funding is all for CDC and JBC and the General Assembly. Again, we ask for one line for each appropriation, and that the project title aligns with the legislation that appropriated the funds. So let's see, there was something else I needed to add.
Yes, Tana, about us setting up the projects that we're following in May. The question that we had from Ramsey last week.
I'm not following you. What's the question?
Every year our OSA sends out to everyone in May the current projects we are following through either capital construction, capital renewal, control maintenance, the ongoing not closed projects. Some agencies have sent in L1s, L2s, but until we finish our review of those L1s and L2, the projects are still active on our spreadsheet. So we will close them, we take them off the list. So if it shows up in your list in May, that's because we're still either don't have time or there's still some clarifications that we need on the L2. So do not remove projects from the staff's report until we remove it. But do add projects to the staff's report, particularly capital construction, that if they don't show up and they're self-funded.
Right, and I'll add to that OSA is a little bit behind in our L1 and L2 reviews. Thank you to trying to either put up COVID sites or take down COVID sites or find warehouses to put the stuff that we took out into warehouses. So we're a little preoccupied with things that we don't normally do in our year. So please be patient. I haven't forgotten about your L1s and L2s. I have a nice pile of them. It's about 10 inches thick now, but I will get to them. So with that.
If I can just add to that, Tana, thank you very much for saying that. The other thing I wanted to share with everyone, there was a question as to whether we could make the image larger on the screen. If you adjust your view options on your individual screen, you'll be able to make the image that we're looking at look larger. And I put in the chat that we would be making this available for you later, but that might be an easy fix for you right now, for those of you that are struggling with not being able to read everything on the screen.
Tana?
Yes, Garth.
I could ask a question. On our status reports, this relates to projects that are having other funds transferred in from another CM project, where we're going to capture that information, as you mentioned, in column 13 for notes. But as far as reporting the total dollars spent on that project, on your line, on your column 7, that number would not exceed the appropriation number, would it?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so they may spend more money because they've spent these other transferred funds, but in terms of this form, don't report more money than what the original appropriation allowed for to be spent.
Correct.
Again,
And
this is
usually
not,
go ahead.
well, this is not really a accounting. This is a tracking of the project getting completed, but not an accounting of the expense on the project. That's the primary goal, is to track you're getting it done.
And don't you have a comments line to the far right, Tana? That's what I thought.
That's the new column notes.
Yeah, column
Yeah,
13.
and just so you know, Garth, typically that's where you would put those transfers in from another project.
Right, we stated that. My question was specifically to some agencies that I've worked with that have had questions about how to fill this out when you have transfers.
Right. What Rod said is really the key there, is that this is not an accounting. We assume you're doing that, and we'll confirm that when we get the L2 documentation. This is really how much of the funds have been spent, and what we report out to the General Assembly is how much of the appropriation has been spent, not how you spent it within the various projects that were given to you. So, are there any questions on these two forms before we move to Rod?
All right. I'll give a quick answer to an email received. It seems that our chat function only shows our answers, but doesn't show the questions from the attendees. So we'll try to, when we answer a question, state the question first. Okay, on the building inventory form, the building tab. First of all, there were no changes to this form, but this issue has come up in years about filling this form out. First, if the building name is changed or is a new building, please add in that particular building name cell a comment about new building or the name changed. It's just easier for us to track it. Yes, there is the risk management number, or for schools, their own internal number when they give me an internal number, but sometimes I cannot track from this year to previous years, the same building if the name changes. If the building no longer exists for some reason, please just please cut that row, the whole row, and paste it below the totals column. For columns 4, 5, and 6, if there's no value there, do not enter 0, please. When I collect all this information to one spreadsheet, having a 0 in those columns makes it more difficult for me to sort and clean up and extract information. If there's any value in column 6 for vacant buildings, that same square footage should still be in columns 4 or 5. We need to know if that vacant building is an auxiliary funded building or if that vacant building is a general funded academic building. Column 9, date acquired. Please only enter a date if it's different from the date built. Another point on date built I forgot to mention last week, but put just the first date it was built. Yes, some buildings get renovated. We're only interested in the original date of the building. Columns 10 and 11, which is the date of the facility audit and the facility condition index number. If you have an audit date, I would expect you have an audit number. If you have an audit number, I would expect an audit date. They should be together. And finally, on the building information tab, yes, there's infrastructure out there, ball fields, stuff like that, that have small buildings on there. Please, on the infrastructure tab, enter the building, just the building information. The infrastructure tab will capture the rest of that information. And infrastructure tab, very similar. Columns 4, 5, and 6, leave blank. If there's no value, don't enter 0. If you have a large field, please enter the square footage of the field. And if there's any buildings on that land, enter those buildings on the building tab. A second, I gotta check my other window. We got multiple computer screens open, so I gotta see if there's any questions. Nope, good. The vacant facility form. We only did one change. We added the county parcel number. We do not need you to submit the vacant facility form for buildings previously funded to add the county parcel number. Through the great work that Chris has been doing on collecting building information, land information, he's actually been capturing the county parcel number for existing facilities. But to reemphasize something else though on this, if you do not need to send the vacant building form for buildings you've already submitted, through your building information tab, I can actually get the most current value, or I pull from risk management. This form is only submitted if there's a change in that use in the building. It become a vacant building, or for some reason the vacant building is now demolished, removed. We need to find out about it then. But if you've already submitted the information about a vacant building with pictures, we don't need to see that form again. Acquisitions and dispositions. Again, the only change here is we added county parcel number. And from Chris, he's done great work, so we don't need that for existing. But if you acquire or dispose of some property, we need to find out about this. The other thing we're emphasizing on this particular form is we want this form submitted in July 6th. We have in the past collected that information September, October, but for our internal workflow, we'd like to get this information July 6th, get this particular section of our annual report done, and then move on to other parts. Oh, the other thing is as Paula may have mentioned, is we don't take TIF files anymore. It's not that we don't take them. No one has submitted a TIF file for years. And so we quit bringing it up because people submit JPEG files or PDF files. And that's the reason we're not accepting TIF files. And basically the last slide, the annual or transmittal form. This is one area where, yes, you can add mark not applicable, but the bottom 5 is not really yes, no, or not applicable, but if you're sending a vacant building form or acquisition disposition form or any other 4 forms, tell us, indicate the quantity, the number of forms you're submitting, not that, yes, you submitted us forms. So when we do our review to look for all the forms, we know how many forms to look for. Any questions? I don't see any right now on the chat. But if you have any, please send them in. And is there anything else the panelists want to mention? Like I said,
Thank
we
you,
were going to be
Rod.
done early, so that's good.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rod. That's actually, you bring up a good point. So if we receive questions from you all after this, we'll try to send out those questions with the answers to this group. I would just ask Tana, Rod, Garth. Okay, did you guys see, Carolyn Fox said, can you go back to the 2 different forms, both called, and then I lost the end of it, both called OSA BI, building inventory, I think is what you're talking about. Rod, do you want to explain that again? And then Mike Bowker asked, can you give an overview of controlled maintenance funding for the current year, level 1 getting funded? We don't really know. We believe so, Mike. We don't know. We think so. If you watched the beginning of the session, you saw a real change in OSPB's approach. They originally did not recommend any funding, and then they had a meeting with the Joint Budget Committee and the CDC, and all of a sudden they found about $31 million. So we don't know. We will know when the long bill is signed. We're feeling better about it than we were before. So Rod, do you mind going back to the building inventory?
Yeah, I'm trying to. It was difficult, but I'm getting there.
Okay. Oh, and the other question I was going to ask you all is if any of you remember any questions from the last meeting that perhaps we answered. I know Tana, you brought up, or no, Rod, you brought up one. And I'm wondering if Paula, if there's any other general information we should stick on the website if we come up with an answer that we didn't share in the presentation. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I don't think there were, any questions really. I believe that, Rod, we were going to put this out and, actually name it OSA information and training on the website. So, and I believe
I'm going to create a new web page under annual documents, and there will be, well, right now I can't tell you how many files will be there, but we will have files. We'll be presenting these slides.
Right.
Okay, and then Carolyn Fox asked, and building infrastructure and building inventory are both OSA BI. I think she's asking, is there a difference between the two? I believe they are both building inventory.
The file name is BI. The tabs is where the difference is. And that's why we call it the OSA BI form. That's the name of the file. But that spreadsheet has 3 tabs. There's the summary tab, which is the first one. The second one is the building tab. The third one is the infrastructure tab.
And as you all may recall, the infrastructure is the one that is when you're pricing out anything below grade, or if you're pricing out a parking lot that is not, you don't collect parking fees for. It's that kind of thing. I don't think it's changed that much. I think we just need you to please fill it out. Thank you very much. That's what we really like to see you do.
And yeah, in your baseball fields are inventory or infrastructure, but the buildings on those fields are buildings.
And as you all may recall from the form, the infrastructure is below the building inventory portion. So here you go, right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's 3 tabs on one spreadsheet.
Right. And the other thing for some of the folks that haven't delved into this worksheet in Excel, the summary sheet, the first tab, it just gathers the information from the other two tabs. You don't have to fill in much, if anything, because whatever, if you haven't corrupted your Excel spreadsheets for the buildings or the infrastructure, it will automatically populate the data that we need for the summary sheet.
So your advice is use the two back tabs to populate the front tab automatically.
Yep. And the other thing is, well, not other thing, but the other thing to bring up is, if you have any questions on any of the forms, spreadsheets, Word documents, whatsoever, please give us a call. We're more than willing to help you fill them out right before they show up July 6th. Then us look at the forms July 7th and wonder why you did it wrong and what's going on.
Help us help you.
You do, on the infrastructure, all your assets are reported. Control maintenance eligible or not. It's all about, do you know your assets? Do you understand what your liabilities, what your needs are? Source of funds, not so much an issue, but that you are identified everything you own. And if you're a state agency under risk management, that you actually have insured all the buildings that are on the list. As risk manager has said in the past, if it's not on the list and you have an issue, I mean, on their list and you have an issue, it does not get covered by insurance.
So we had a question of, do we report parking lots on the BI infrastructure if we are collecting parking fees from that lot? And the
Yes.
answer is no, that would be considered auxiliary funded at that point.
No, we do capture it. It just doesn't qualify for control maintenance.
Ah, see?
Okay, that's true, but just keep in mind that when you're doing your estimated deficiency and all, that you're doing that for yourself. You're not doing that for us.
And so for some
Is a
agencies,
shed considered a building?
right, what some agencies have done is they will take the first 4 or 5 rows, copy them down later below it. And so they have 2 different sections on that spreadsheet of academic and non-academic information.
Do you guys remember what the definition of auxiliary structures are? I would wonder if the shed, and help me with this, if the shed is considered a structure by risk management, we would consider it a structure, correct?
Yep.
So in answer to, is a shed considered a structure, I would reach out to your risk management contact and ask them if they have it insured. And if they do, then yes, it is. Okay. Well, if we don't have any more, and thank you all very much for your time. And I think are we finishing 38 minutes early? Is that correct?
Yep.
Well, I feel younger. Okay, well, so thank you all very, very much. And we appreciate you being here. As I said, we still have we'll be offering 2 controlled maintenance sessions. And then state agencies, we will only offer 1 capital construction or capital renewal session. So anyway, thank you very much, guys.